Thank you so much.
All right, good evening. We're going to call this committee of the whole meeting to order here at 6 p.m. in council chambers. I have no electronic attendance, correct?
Correct.
There's one board appointment, as you can see. And we don't, questions on the agenda later. So we'll start with our presentation. Mr. Griffith.
Good evening. My name is Eric Griffith. I'm here with Burbach Aquatics. We've got Josh Layer that is on the computer. He's going to go through a PowerPoint, and I'm going to interject as well, but he's going to be doing the majority of the PowerPoint. So I see Josh is there, so go ahead, Josh.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to try to share my screen, and just let me know if you start seeing the PowerPoint presentation on your end.
Oh, we don't see it yet.
There you go. Perfect.
Alrighty, well, thank you, everyone. As Eric said, I'm Josh Layer with Burbach Aquatics. We've been working with the city of Moline for the past couple of months on a technical evaluation and a feasibility study for the Riverside Aquatic Center improvement project. We've had 5 meetings to date. With that, part of it was a technical evaluation of the existing facility that Burbach Aquatics actually was the engineer of record when it was built back in, I believe, 2001. And a part of the feasibility process, we look at the competing pools in the area, the amenities that they have, the wants and needs of Moline itself and the community, and then we do conceptual site plan development and look at opinions of construction cost and operating cost in that process. And tonight's just a presentation of the committee's hard work over the last 5 months. As far as the technical evaluation that was done, your facility is in very good shape right now. There's just a few things that we saw. The fixture count that you have already puts you in the bracket of the 500 to 1,000 patron capacity range. So that allows you options to expand the facility to a certain point, or we can work with the state to have a variance for 1,000 patrons or less. And talking with the group, right now, the way the facility's set up and in the future, that would probably be the direction that they would want to go. But when the facility was built, there was existing infrastructure put in place for expansion. There are space in the mechanical area for additional filtration and recirculation equipment. There's tanks available, and there's piping already kind of stubbed in there. There was a little bit of settlement by the guard room door, but nothing too extravagant. There was a little bit of cracking around the stairs going into the main pool vessel, and that's already been fixed. And there was some issues with the chlorine door condition, and the ventilation fan wasn't working properly. And a part of this process, we talked about switching these solid chlorine tanks in this picture in the bottom right to a liquid chlorine system, and that's put in the conceptuals and the opinions of cost that I'll be presenting here in a little bit. The other concern was the zero depth entry structure that's there, and there is, in the opinions of cost and the conceptuals, a plan to remove that structure in the future. But with that, Burbach Aquatics does a competing pool review. Where we looked at a 30-mile radius and the facilities in that radius. where you see the yellow thumbtacks are the pools that we looked at. I'm just going to highlight a few. And we also look at your service population in the Quad City metro area. I mean, you've got a large service population to pull from and boost your attendance. But we looked at Whitewater Junction and Rock Island and the different features that it has. The main pool was 10,200 square feet. The plunge pool was 1,400 square feet. It had a body flume and a tube water slide. The large beach style zero depth with different spray amenities and a small toddler slide there. And also they had drop slides, and they do have shade around the facility as well. We looked at Bettendorf and the size of that facility. That has a large beach style, zero depth entry, a water slide with a speed enclosed slide and an open body flume slide. It has a drop slide, which I think has been removed by the time this picture was taken. And it's a 6-lane, 25-meter pool. And it also has a zero depth entry kiddie pool with features there. And then we looked at Davenport. These are more hatchet style, zero depth entry, no lap lanes in either of them, but they do have water slide shade structures. And Burbach Aquatics is actually working with this community to update these facilities too. And then we kind of looked at the wants and needs of the group, and we developed this list, and we carried this list forward throughout the feasibility process. And you'll see a lot of these, different items in the conceptual site plans that the park board is presenting to you tonight. But they wanted a wow factor to increase the facility's revenue, better use of the zero depth entry. One of them was deep water, another was shade, low maintenance, unisex restroom, better site and storm water drainage, park and rec offices, and just a feature that sticks out and is a central attraction for the community. Less grass, climbing wall, spray pad, and an update to the concession area or in the bathhouse. So what they landed on, there's two different versions and they're very similar, and I'll go through the conceptual and show you the new layout. So as you enter, the parking lot would remain the same. Obviously, you guys just updated that, and so we'll keep that the way it is. But as you enter the bathhouse, we will be updating the concessions area. And there will also be a large concession shade structure that's 30 feet by 30 feet. We will be adding park and rec offices to the north. There'll be 4 offices there with 2 family or unisex change rooms, and then a nice conference room in that park and rec office. And there is a mechanical space for the spray pad. We'll be adding pool area lighting throughout the facility so you can extend your hours and have more rentals after dark and different parties to rent the pool out to different groups in the area. We're adding a 706 square foot spray pad. We are removing the existing play structure, adding cantilever shades throughout the facility. And then there's a large 30-foot raft slide and open body flume slide to the main facility. And the big attraction is the lazy river. We'll be adding that as well. And then converting solid chlorine to liquid chlorine, and then adding or redoing the parking lot to the east side of the building. Overall, this project, and this is the opinion of probable construction cost, has an opinion of $5,323,000. Version number 7 is basically the same. Oh, and one thing I didn't touch on the last one, the mechanical room for the Lazy River will also have 2 family restrooms or unisex bathrooms that will service the park and the new pickleball courts that you guys just installed. But version number 7 is basically the same. The biggest changes is the park and rec offices go away. We still have the family or unisex bathrooms as a part of the mechanical building for that spray pad. And there will be a bathroom on the outside for that spray pad that in both versions, the spray pad is designed with a fence around it. So on the shoulder seasons of May and September, you can operate that spray pad and not operate the pool. So it extends your season. But that is version number 7. As I mentioned, the biggest change is the size of that spray pad and the storage, family restrooms. And that has an opinion of probable construction cost of $4,968,000. One of the things the park board asked is just to kind of itemize their top 10 list as far as, and this was the list they gave, 1 through 10, the unisex or gender neutral restrooms. We have an opinion of probable construction cost of $45,000. Switching over the liquid chlorine to solid chlorine, the solid chlorine to liquid chlorine would be $20,000. The large raft and speed slide would be $700,000. The splash pad, the larger splash pad would be $610,000. The lazy river would be $1,450,000. Parking lot is $275,000. The shade structures that you saw around the facility are valued at $150,000. The pool area lighting is at $195,000, and an update to the concessions, $65,000. And the park offices would be $700,000. And those costs above are individualized, but there may be some additional costs with any improvement project. Once a specific project is chosen, BAI would like the chance to look at that project and give you a true opinion of probable construction cost. And that one example there is the gender neutral restrooms, because where those are located, if you don't do the lazy river, it would take some redesign to get you the park bathrooms. We also looked at what the change would be as far as the cost to operate the facility, and looking at the current wage rates and the potential for daily passes with an enhanced facility and yearly passes with an enhanced facility, it would be a net gain of $41,600. It would add 6 staff, and that 7,000 passes equates to 100 passes a day for a 10-week season. And one of the other things that Burbach Aquatics helps communities figure out is how are we going to pay for it? And these are possible funding mechanisms, and I think Eric will probably go into this a little bit further detail than I will, but some of the ideas were the general fund, possibly COVID relief money, extending the existing bond that is going to be paid off fairly soon, and use it for an improvement project. And that is the graphic to the right there that Eric will discuss a little bit more. A sales tax or a TIF district, and with a lot of our projects, especially with businesses that you have in your community and the availability to raise funds for some of these funner items of the project to lessen the impact on your taxpayers, a capital campaign would be an option. And Eric, I think that's it. If there's any questions, comments, or if you'd like to see a, additional sign or slide or conceptual site plan, I can move to those.
Josh, could you go back 2 slides back to the operating costs? I just want to point out a couple of things with that.
Yep.
So this is based off of $15 per hour. Right now we're sitting at $11 to $11.50 for staff, but we wanted to eventually by 2025 we're going to be paying minimum $15 per hour. So we wanted to make sure that we were making that assumption based off of what it's going to be in 3 to 4 years from now. Also, the price is based off of $8 for admission. We figured if we were able to do this kind of upgrades that we would be able to charge $8, $1 less than one of the cities on this side of the border as well. And then if you could go to the one talking about the bond, I'd just like to point that out real quick to the city council. So the graph on here right now, we have a debt for a bond at $175,000 per year. That was, we've got 2 more payments on that. The last payment is January 1st of 23. When this bond was taken out 15, 16, 17 years ago, we were able to bond for $1 million. And in today's market, at 15 years, well, at 3% or 2.5%, we're able to get $2,180,000, and then at 20 years, at 3%, just over 2.5 million. So that could be an option as budgets, start to talk about continuing that debt past the 2023 payment, and then of course we're talking about general fund and COVID relief dollars. I think that's a larger discussion that's going to have to be made during city council. Also, we could, we could borrow twice as much as the 175 for the 350, and that would get you to your 2.3 or 5.3 million. Questions?
Mr. Went.
In here, I just want for clarification, it says 500 to 1,000 patron capacity range.
Mm-hmm.
Is that per day?
That's how many we can have in our facility at one time. So right now we have max capacity of 748. Even with the additional, the additions to the facility, we'd still be in that 500 to 1,000. So we could go up to 1,000 without having to add more restrooms besides the family and the unisex.
Okay. What is because this presumes 100 people a day, every day for 10 weeks is the revenue thing. What are we averaging per day right now?
That is a very good question. I don't have that answer right now, but I'll get it.
Okay. My concern is, I look at these operating on the slide, and it doesn't include debt service, so it shows that we're making 41,000.
That's just on our operating, correct?
Right, but because I think we went through it with Lori, and we were losing.
Any other questions?
Every person that came through, we were subsidizing it by $37 per person that came through the door.
I don't know if he can hear you or not.
Could you hear the councilman asking questions, or do we need to speak into the mic? Mr.
But
Ware?
I don't think Josh would have an answer for our debt anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my concern with the presentation, where it shows that we're making a profit of 41,000. That doesn't include the debt service, which might be to get to this 350,000.
Yeah. So in 2019, it was roughly 253,000, and that includes the 175,000, the debt. Payment from 2019. I don't have any numbers for 2020 since we weren't open. But,
Okay.
In 2019, it was roughly 253,000.
Thank you. Mr. O'Brien?
Well, I agree with you that that pool definitely needs something. What we've got there isn't, I mean, is this a cafeteria approach? We can pick
So
and choose?
that's the reason why Park Board went with their top 10 is if we continue that debt of $175,000 a year for either 15 or 20 years, that gets us roughly 2.1 to 2.5. Then we're able to pick the different items from that top 10 list and do those improvements.
Okay. Because I think the lap pool is something that is probably needed. They need some deep water down there for
Yeah.
people that want to come and swim laps.
Yeah, so when we discussed the different options, the deep water would be roughly about a $2 million investment just to do basically what you're saying. If we just did 2 diving boards with a plunge pool, it's about 800,000. So when we were looking at what we could get for 2 million in comparison to just having deep water, to you could get almost 2 slides and the lazy river for that same price. That's kind of how
Okay.
we picked and choose. You know, looking at the overall concept, we tried to take every group into factor. You know, when parents and grandparents that don't want to swim, what are they going to be doing? They're going to be sitting, you know,
Shade.
in the shade. So we wanted to make sure we had plenty of shade around. You know, the wow factor. The slides that were originally at the swimming pool before they were taken out were 25 feet tall. These are 30 feet tall. So you're not going to miss those driving by. And then, of course, the lazy river, that kind of incorporates every group. Updating concessions brings in more revenue. Switching over chemicals, that's not something the general public will really see, but being hands-on and getting some of that on me this year, it has not been a fun process and something overdue. And then, of course, parking. Parking will be an issue if we don't update the parking along the side. And then lights. So the reason why Whitewater Junction can be open later is that, you know, they can have rentals and stuff because they have lights. Right now, we have to close about a half hour before sunset. That's when you would have to turn the lights on. So by sunset, we have to close. And by having lights at night, rentals can go to 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock. We can do special events along with it and open during the day more because then we can have rentals at night, private rentals.
Yes, Mr. Waldron.
For full disclosure, just want to let everybody know I did serve on this committee. There was a whole host of folks that were on it, about five
Yes,
different
so
people.
we had Amanda Bolt, she's the rec coordinator, myself, and then 3 park board members at the time, and then Alderman Waldron got off but still stayed on as city council.
And just to let you know, this was a priority or a goal of the last council to take a look at this pool, and like Pat said, try to find something to make this more livable, so to speak. You know, typically, as we all know, pools aren't going to make money. You know, they generally are a quality of life issue, something that you need in your community and want in your community, but they're not there to make hundreds of thousands of dollars. But we knew, the committee knew we missed a wow factor. There wasn't anything that drove you to Moline's pool, especially if you were over the age of 6. So we took that into regard when we take a look at those options, and we talked about the deep well, Pat, and we looked at all that stuff, and we wanted to make sure that we could get people through that door like we had the slide.
And in that 30-minute radius, I think Geneseo is the only one that has a lazy river, but in the Quad Cities, no one else has a lazy river. That was another factor in it. And then the splash pad was a big deal to the committee. So when the facility's not open, or let's say there's swimming lessons going on in the morning until we open, from 8 in the morning till about noon, that splash pad is free. Anyone can come in, use it, May through, you know, the end or the beginning of September. And then when the facility opens, that gate will lock, and then as soon as the facility closes, they could use it for a certain period. So that gives another free amenity that we haven't had before in our city, and that can go from May to September, where pool season's not that long.
Second question.
So we've talked about this before. I mean, obviously, I'm in favor. You know, Waldron and I talked about this. That our pool is in like
Is you losing it?
not the Goldilocks zone, but in the twilight zone. I mean, it's right in between. It's too dangerous just to be like splash pad to let your kids go with the zero entry, but not exciting enough that you're going to pull in anybody over 6 years old. So I love this concept of being able to bring more people in and all that stuff. What I'd really like to see, and we've talked about this before, is the creation of a Friends of the Moline Parks, a foundation in which we can then go out and maybe leverage some of this. This would be an amazing project for something that where I think we could get people from the community to donate to to increase what we have as an amenity here, because clearly. Somebody's calling to donate right now. But I think that, you know, that is something that really I'd like to see, and then maybe we could leverage it and have matching funds or something like that to get to that number.
Not unlike pickleball.
Exactly. I mean, I think we've shown that can be a really good thing in our community and increase the amenities that we have.
Thank you for work on this. Are there any other questions on this presentation?
I'll get you the attendance.
That would be great.
I want it, with no other questions, I wanted to say thank you for this work and thank you to the committee. I am a mother of a not professional, competitive swimmer. We've been all over the central Midwest. And also, Alvaro is also a parent of a competitive swimmer. We've seen a lot of pools, a lot of outdoor pools that make really wonderful complements to the quality of place. What you've presented, I think, will really do wonderful things for the community, and as long as we can find a way to cover operating expenses, that'll be great. So thank you for your work on that.
Thank you, Josh.
Next, we move to
Thank you.
Thank you.
funding request for Stevens Park updates. Mr. Griffith.
This one over here? Oh, I'm over here. There we go. Okay, if you guys remember back June 15th, brought a presentation or informational to talk about some upgrades to that. So this is my formal request tonight. First, I'd just like to okay.
There we go. Over
You
here.
should be, yours is definitely doing that.
I'm going on this one, but it's changing that one.
He controls that.
Okay. So we're talking about two different areas. So when I show you the basketball is going to go right behind the baseball field, right in the middle. So that's the two fields. And then over on the left-hand side, those three areas would be the mini pitch soccer systems. Okay. Just want to remind everyone what the mini pitch soccer systems look like. It's by Musco Lighting. These would be blacktop. They would be painted just like the pickleball or tennis courts, built in fencing around. It's got bleachers built in, soccer nets built in, and then the lighting as well. Set up similar to what the pickleball courts are. There's an app on my phone. I can program it to whatever time I'd like, and we can have it on later, earlier, whatever we need to.
Eric, can I ask a question? Is that usable also for deck hockey, or is it too small?
Yeah, no, it would be used for, you could use it for deck hockey.
Thank you.
And then, of course, the two basketball courts, same thing. The lighting would be through Musco. We would be able to program that as well. This is the breakdown that's in your information, the $578,900. So what I'm...
You're connected to that.
Okay, now we're over here.
I'm trying to follow you on this one.
All right, so staff is requesting a cash advance of $578,900 to the general fund to be paid back from future revenue of TIF number 2. The revenues from TIF number 2 are only projections, okay? And then finally, the last slide shows what that projection is over the life of TIF number 2. Carol's gonna talk about the bond refinancing next, but with that new number, TIF two has a projected $1,191,456. That is my request.
Yes, Mr. Went.
So I think we've been talking about this since maybe before you got your cards when you when you came here, and so I thank you for all your hard work in getting this done. I am 100% in favor of this. In fact, I think that we should go a step further on it. And I shared with Eric that in some communities, like in Oklahoma City or whatever, they also, like the basketball courts, you can also use these mini pitches, and they include basketball hoops on either end. And so what I'd like to see is this, but you know, the 3 mini pitches, but then the 2 basketball courts be lined at 5 mini pitches for them, be lined as basketball courts and futsal, but include the basketball hoops on either end. And we had the conversation, and it would be an additional $73,000. But I think that it gives us unbelievable flexibility, because if we then wound up having a tournament, like a futsal tournament, you then could use 5 courts, not just 3, or deck hockey, or
Let me explain what you're saying. So basically what he's saying is put 3 of these mini pitch soccer systems in the grassy area. That would be for soccer. But for the basketball, you put that mini pitch plus basketball hoops over the soccer nets. So those would be for basketball, but if we were able to run a tournament or a league, we would have 5 fields of soccer instead of 3.
or start a deck hockey thing. You could then have the extra thing. I mean, I was up at Stevens Park just the other day driving through, and I got pictures of kids out in that field. They take sticks that came out of the trees and stuck them in the ground, and that was their goals, and they were out there playing soccer. And so I think that this is an amazing amenity. So I would like to move to approve the suggestion, but increase it by $73,000 to create 5 mini pitches, with 2 of them being basketball.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
So motion by Alderman Went, seconded by Alderman Moyer. We had a hand over here first, but I will open it up to discussion. Mr. Williams?
I'll wait.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Moyer.
Thank you. Is that $73,000 to the total?
Yes.
Okay, so that covers both of the,
Yes.
all right, cool.
I have a question as well, then I'll call on you. Have we talked to our local clubs, like, about the ideas about tournaments, or were you expecting that that would just be a park board, a park-sponsored thing?
No, we would, oh, sorry, keep going.
I just think that the collaboration would probably be really smart, and to know whether they would take advantage of outdoor opportunities as opposed to the gyms around town, et cetera, would be good information. Has anybody reached out to MGBA or anything like that?
So having discussions with the soccer club and the Y, when in January when this originally came up, they talked about wanting to run some tournaments there, and then also for us being able to run deck hockey, multiple tournaments for soccer, having our Little League soccer usually plays at Riverside, has been moved to Green Valley.
Right.
It's tough on the grass.
Yeah.
Being able to play there, also being able to run outdoor basketball camps, tournaments. This would give us a home to do a lot more
Right.
with what we don't have.
Okay. Mr. Waldron?
That amount of money is a
Mhm.
significant amount of money, and don't get me wrong, I'm all for the project. I'm all for using the TIF2 funds. But how do we front that money? Can we afford to front that money and then repay it with TIF2? What do we think about that, Carol? Or how would we make that happen?
Are you prepared to answer?
Between Carol and I think we can answer that. I mean, this would not be the first time that monies have been advanced, okay? I mean, you did it in TIF 1,
Sure.
$6, $7, $8 million, and most of which your own consultant recommends not repaying. because the level of investment it generated, for your 6 million, you generate 96 million, you got more than $1 for every dollar you invested. So, hence that's their recommendation, not to repay, general fund dollars back into TIF number 1. And I think you've all seen that memo. It came out before I started working here. If you haven't seen it, I'll provide it to you. In the case at hand, you're not looking at a project that would generate increment. I mean, this is not a typical TIF project. It's not an increment generating project. It's not a job producing project. It's more of a public improvement to a park and recreation system that will generate traffic in and around the facility, benefiting neighboring businesses. So people who otherwise might not come here on a regular basis would come here to recreate, and they might frequent some of the local restaurants or establishments in that immediate area. And I'm not, of course, not that familiar with all of that, but that's typically what happens with something like this. By advancing the money that there, we don't have a crystal ball. I mean, I can't sit here today and tell you that you're going to have 1.1 or 1.2 million dollars at the end of the TIF. Carol's running those projections. I'll let her speak to that. But again, it's always a gamble because you don't know ultimately what's going to happen. Projects like this, I mean, you have a whole capital improvement, a master plan for the previous councils have approved for your park and recreation system. One thing that, and again, if I'm lecturing, I'm sorry, but as you look at the master plan typically will have costs at the time it's adopted associated with all the park improvements that you need to do. And then you need to schedule those inside of your capital improvement program, going out 5, 10, 15, 20 years, because these are, 20-year improvements. I mean, these are not just 5-year improvements. They go way out. Whether that happened or not, I wasn't here when this discussion started in January. It was not a part of your fiscal 22 budget discussions, in all fairness to those listening. But it's a project all the same that got legs in January, and here we are in September, or I'm sorry, August. I'm thinking September. In August, and we're having this discussion about including this, and I'm assuming this would be in the 2022 budget proposals. Not today, but 2022 budget proposals that you would approve, and you're kind of like earmarking what you're going to decide in the fall months for projects for next year, and this one rises to the top out of your capital park and rec master plan, if the park board agreed with that. So,
Thank you.
as opposed to the pool, which is also something you would need to earmark for 2022. It's not budgeted for the current year.
Mr. Williams?
Eric, my concern, I like the project, but my concern is that Stevens Park is very much a neighborhood park. And it's been the late 70s when we had beer league softball that we had it all lit up and a lot of noise. And I know the Stevens Park neighborhood group is extremely active, and I was just curious if the park board reached out to Stevens Park and had conversations with those neighbors on 4th Street, because they will go from a quiet, serene park to lit up like the 4th of July and a lot of noise for a long time.
So Bill Abel, the president of Stevens Park, is on our board, and he's been giving regular updates on this project. Just talking about that with Alderman Moyer before this. So the lights typically at like the tennis courts and the pickleball courts go off at 11 p.m. That's not really in a residential area. We could program the lights to go off at 9 p.m. On those typical, on any night of the week. I think we would see more traffic, but we do already see people playing in that soccer field, seeing those basketball courts. And I mean, the Little League girls softball plays at that big field June and July, almost every night of the week, Monday through Friday. And so I think it would add some traffic to it, but like what the city administrator said, I think it'd be a positive thing to get some of those extra people coming into the community and then going to those restaurants, those bars that are there, and kind of putting Stevens Park as a destination park.
Mr. Macias?
And I don't think the lighting would be such a bad thing either, because it's super dark there. I used to run at night when it was cooler around that area, and you just never know. It's really dark over there, so Yeah, hopefully, you know, they can see the positive.
The layout
to the-
that
yeah.
we have the courts going this way is because then the court lights aren't directly shining onto any of the houses. And the way Musco lighting is set up, you can say, okay, 5-10 feet, you know, past the fence, that's all the further the lights will go. Or you can just strictly keep the light on it. It's Musco lighting is way ahead of times for sports lighting.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt.
As we look at turning those basketball courts and that piece, would the lines then be for the futsal? Right, so it's not marked up for a free throw and a 3-pointer, it's marked up for futsal, or how would that work on the?
So
both.
actually,
On the basketball.
Both, yeah.
I sent you one.
yeah, so sorry. I
Oh,
put
no.
that in there. So actually, right now, the basketball court is striped just like this. There is no free throw line.
Okay.
So it would be almost exactly the same. And if we wanted to add a 3-point line or the 3-throw, it would be very easy to do it. And I've striped courts before with multiple different sports, and we just do it in a different color. It wouldn't be difficult to do.
Yeah, and I just wouldn't want us to say, like, take out the basketball court and have it be like,
Yeah.
well, there's still a hoop, but there's not really a court anymore.
Right, I agree.
Okay.
I-
All right. On the same question, go ahead, Mr. O'Brien.
Do we have, spent a lot of money on parks tonight, it looks like, apparently. Do we have we're talking about a master plan. Is there a master plan to repair some of these other basketball courts and other
Yes.
parks?
So basically, for the 5-year CIP budget, if we do Stevens Park in 22, we've got the rest of the basketball courts falling in line between 22 and 25. That's what I'm proposing. Park board will have to approve it before.
Because didn't you tell me that's the best court that you just showed us there that we have right now?
You are correct.
So
Yeah.
if that's the
I hope that's
best
not
one,
true. I hope that's not true.
Yeah.
the rest of them aren't in good
Most of
shape.
them look this way,
Yeah,
yes.
they're in pretty bad shape.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the way that the layout and what it looks like, not the fencing around it, but that would be the standard that we would want to put in going forward at the other parks.
Okay.
Okay.
We want to put quality back in, especially at the cost.
Mr. Went.
Yeah, this is a very unique situation because of its proximity and inclusion within that TIF, and I appreciate the same thing, but that's why I think it's time to do this. And for a little bit of clarification, if anybody has some concerns, like this year, the general fund is getting paid back about a little over $2 million out of TIF 1 as a repayment for advances. So that's money that goes into the reserves, increases our cash on hand reserves. So we should be fine cash flow wise to be able to advance this because we'll still have more than the 2.1 that's coming in. And then the other, Carol, any concern about this is a projection, but I think with this refinancing that we wind up with TIF number 6 being in a better position as well, as in a positive position. And since those are neighboring TIFs, I guess that might be another thing that we would say, repaid out of TIF 2 or TIF 6, because we would be able to use either funding source. I don't think that we're going to have any problem getting to the 600 and whatever it is, 50,000 or dollar out of either TIF 6 or along with TIF 2, but
Okay.
to alleviate any concerns.
I just, when we get around to doing Easton Park, I don't want to hear how you're going to pay for it. We don't have any money to do
Those are two different-
because we're spending a lot of money.
But
No,
those
there's a
are-
Parks Department. It's one park department.
Pat, that's
They're
not
not
true.
two different things.
No, this is not coming out of the Parks Department. This is coming out of the TIF funds.
True, but they're all parks in Moline, and they all deserve attention.
But
And
those are
I have
different
a right to
funds.
ask the question.
Yeah, so first off, I need to call on everyone who wants to speak. And we need to wrap up this discussion so we can get to the rest of our agenda. But I'll entertain one last question from a hand raise.
My only concern, not about whether we can get repaid on it, but is if we're diverting the money on the TIF now, are there other projects we should have been considering instead that we're going to be missing down the road? And I guess interested if we have an opinion to that of where else we're at in that TIF.
That I'm going to, yes, we're all looking to the administrator.
Yeah, no, I know you are, and let me assure you, I can appreciate your concern. You know, you've got 13 TIFs, and you've got one expiring at the end of December, and that's TIF number 1, your original TIF, and after 35 years it will expire, and next year in 2022 you have to zero the account. You have to be at the end of 2022, that account will be done, officially done. But that's the financial obligation. Now, in terms of TIF 6 or any of these TIFs, you know, and absent having some staff hearing guidance for a while, I think you have to go back and look at your TIFs. I think you have to examine each one. You have to see where they are financially. Some are better than others. Some are suffering. Only 2 are bad, from what I understood. But you know, the other ones are doing all right. And you have to go back and you have to, as a council, weigh, you know, what you're going to do going forward in each and every one of these TIFs as we look at the economic recovery of your city, you know, and you have to balance in your minds based upon good planning practices, and that includes the Park and Rec Master Plan. I mean, I found that on my phone on June 15th because Mike was presenting. It was my first meeting, and I said, wow, I hope we have a plan.
You mean Eric?
Eric.
What did I say?
Mike.
I can see how
You know what? I'm going to bring a picture of Mike here because I've done this to him
Fictional
before.
Mike.
He looks exactly like Mike's twin, and I apologize immensely for that. Sorry, Eric. I do like you. Sorry. But no, I think you have to take these plans into consideration, whether they are TIF plans, whether they are your Park and Rec Master Plan, or, you know.
Whether it's can I interrupt you,
Yeah.
sir?
Yeah.
The strategic plan. I mean, once we are finalizing that, right, then all of the pillars will point to what do we care about, how are we getting there? And I think
Yeah.
that's the other plan we have to,
Work with
answer that
us.
question of where's our hierarchy of
And where are your
activities?
priorities? See, because council priorities are council priorities. And as an administrator and as a finance director and a Park and Rec director and the others, you know, we take guidance through policy at a level that you create. So as we go through these plans, in your case, Pat, you know, you're right, there are other parks that are not in TIFs that don't get funded. Those funding decisions and questions are a part of your strategic discussions. I mean, we're going to have those work sessions. And when you start to set up your capital improvement programs, the end of the day, that's like really drilling down before we get to the administrative level of making it happen. You can prioritize all those parks. You know, like Mike said,
Eric?
Eric, help me.
Name tag.
Eric, just hold up a sign that says Eric, or a name tag. So what Eric was saying, what Eric was saying is that, yes, there's other basketball courts that are in worse condition than that maybe should go first, but they weren't prioritized before. So Pat, you need to bring these things back with the park board, and you need to get them into the budget, into the capital improvement program, based on that master plan, because the public expects you to follow your own plans, at least follow your own plans. And I will promise you, we will work together to make that happen across the boards, but it's going to take some more bodies than we are in the process of getting them on board.
I was just gonna say, is it on a different question?
No, it's a clarification of
Okay,
the question.
Mr. Nguyen.
So what you need to understand is with the TIF funds, they can only be used either in this TIF or into an adjacent TIF.
Right.
TIF number 2 is built out. I mean, there's no other projects. I mean, that's one Moline place. There isn't raw land to do other projects or everything like that. Now, TIF number 6 is not built out. There is still phase 2 of the overlook and those possibilities. So I'm not going to pretend that those funds couldn't be used for something else. But this council has made it a priority that projects like that are going to be done on a performance-based, not where we're going to front a bunch of money to these people. And so the increment will come off of what they actually produce. And so that would be the only other use for these funds. If not, the funds would sit there until the TIF retired, and then they would then be dispersed out to the other taxing bodies and those sorts of things. But that wouldn't be until 2037 or something.
And I went to look at the map to answer my own question, and I'm seeing very much like, yeah, where else are we going to spend
There's
the
not a
money?
whole lot of other options.
And that was my question. Where else would we spend the money? And so
Okay, thank you.
Depends.
Carol Barnes.
I might add to just very briefly,
Just keep speaking up, because I'm not sure all the mics are on.
No one's on, but it's so far away from
Just
her.
hold it, take it out of its holder, Karen.
I would just like to add to what Bob said in opening it, in response to your question. Over the life of the TIF, you project the total revenue stream from TIF increment between TIF 2 and TIF 6 at about $1.4 million over the next 10 to 12 years. And so this project would take less than half of that, so there would still be a good amount that still remains if there were some additional projects that come to life.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So we've had a motion and a second.
Mayor, before we
Yes.
question, can I clarify, my understanding of the motion was that this is for an advance from the general fund in 2021?
No.
For the basketball, to add the extra money for the basketball, right?
Yeah,
That was
added
the
the extra
amendment.
one, but it would be in advance, and then we have to either do it by a budget amendment, or we have to
Right.
put it in the 22 budget. I mean, I've got no, I mean, whether we do it now, it's not gonna get built and engineered until next year anyway, so.
If we do put it in the 22 budget, I do ask that we could start engineering and designing
Now.
it for the 41,000 to get that started.
Yeah, so I'd like
right
to
away.
clarify, I'd like to do it now,
That's the
as,
way I
as an
had it.
advance.
Thank you.
Now.
That would be,
Yes, that would be fine.
that would be great.
Okay, so, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion passes.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much,
Congratulations.
sir. Carol Barnes, 2021A and 2021B bond refinancing results.
Awesome.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Hopefully you all received my email last night, but I am very pleased to report that we had a very successful bond sale yesterday. In addition to the savings that we discussed last week, we will be realizing an additional $45,500 of additional savings. And that will be split out between TIF 2, an additional $281,348 of savings, and for TIF number 6, $138,924. And Anthony Maselli is with us remotely, and he's from Spear Financial, and he is going to be reviewing the results of the sale in just a little bit more depth, and then we're both happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Hello, Anthony, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Take it away.
All right, perfect. Nice to see everybody this evening. So we took bids yesterday on the city's 2021A and 2021B taxable general obligation refunding bonds, as Carol had mentioned, to refund the existing 2012A and 2012B bonds. I'm happy to report that we received a total of 6 bids on each issuance. The bids ranged from a low of 1.72 to a high bid of 3.18%, so there's some pretty good variance. The best bid was on each series was from the People's National Bank of Kewanee at that 1.72%. When we started this process, we looked at how best to complete the sale of these bonds, whether to go to a public offering where we would issue the bonds with a bond rating and through an underwriter, or through a private placement where we offer the bonds to local and regional banks to bid on and bid on as an investment. At the time, we had an idea that a public offering would result in a rate of around 2% and an all-in cost with all costs included plus the rate at about 2.37. And we had an indication at that time that a private placement, such as the sale we did yesterday and are talking about today, would be about a rate of 1.9%, or an all-in cost at about 2.15%. So with the results yesterday, we received a final rate of 1.72 and an all-in cost with all expenses included at 1.88%. So really phenomenal results, and well below even the indication that we had received, about a month and a half when we processed. As Carol had mentioned, the savings on the 2021 A bonds was just over $281,000. And on the 21B bonds, we had just over $138,000 in savings. So it was just about $394,000 in savings, about 13.6% of refunded par. And all of those savings are after the cost to complete the issue. Happy to answer any questions regarding the bond sale.
Any questions from the council? Oh, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
And thank you, Carol.
Welcome.
Thank you, Nancy.
All right.
Thank you for your hard work.
Any questions on the agenda? Then hearing none, we will move forward to agenda item number 1. Adopting the Moline Public Art and Placemaking Plan, designating the downtown Moline Public Art Program area, and amending various chapters of the Moline Code of Ordinances, establishing provisions for the governance of the city's public art program. Turning this over to Mr. Silverman.
Hello, good evening. I can't see you. Hopefully you can see me.
We can.
Okay, good. All right, so what is before you, and hopefully you got the Scrivener's error corrected version. There was a mistake that I had made on the initial term of commissioners that I can go over in a few minutes. Mayor, how would you like to do this? Do you want me to walk through the ordinance, or do we want to field questions? How do we want to do this?
I think that the council member's job was to read it thoroughly. You don't need to walk us through it. I think we'll just field questions.
Okay.
Any questions? Can you clarify the error on the commissioner's terms?
Yeah, so I had, excuse me for 1 second. The original way it was put in if you look at the original ordinance, and we'll talk about, give me 1 second, let me get to the section. That would be section, it's in section 5 of the ordinance where we create the Public Art Commission. And what this does is it creates a whole new section in Division 9 of your ordinances, and specifically in section 2-4910, we set staggered initial terms for the commissioners, and I just had the terms wrong. My notes were incorrect. So the way it's set out now is 4 commissioners will be appointed to 2-year terms, and 3 commissioners will be appointed to 3-year terms. Alderman Schmidt caught this error and let me know when we fixed it today, and that's why there's the corrected version before you with that.
Can you give us the corrected version? Because in my...
the corrected version.
What?
He just said
Oh,
Yeah,
yes, I get it. Sorry, I was looking at different numbers. This is easily missed. Okay, we're good.
Okay, you got it?
Yep, got it.
Okay. I can share my screen if that's helpful. I don't know.
No, we're good. Mr. Waldron.
Last time we talked about utilizing the facade program funds, and I'm sure we all got an email today that from a constituent telling us not to use the facade funds. Have we corrected that? I know it was our intention not to use them.
I see it on the document still. Yeah, it's still on.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's true that our intent was not to use them. I think that, for instance, if we had a situation, and actually I had this conversation with Barb, that like the Access Hotel. So the Access Hotel, it's already done, but the Art Deco things that were on there, that would be considered art, I think. And so in limited situations, if the Art Commission said, hey, and that's facade, I mean, it's facade, that is also art, that in limited situations that you could use the facade improvement as part of this art plan. And so I think that we should leave it in. It's not one of the top 3, it's not the used on a regular basis thing, but if the Art Commission comes back and says, hey, yes, we should use it for this, And there, in TIF, on the other hand, we're also talking about creating a facade improvement out of TIF funds, which is different than our normal facade improvement. I think it gives us the flexibility we need in here. It doesn't say that we're going to use it, but there are going to be situations where facade is art.
I do see it. It's on page 7 if you're looking on your computers at the bottom paragraph.
And
it
11.
says, what?
And 11.
And 11, okay, thank you. From time to time, it gives us the opportunity to use other things from time to time. It's not the main mode of doing business. Mr. O'Brien.
If it's from time to time, why can't they just come back to the council and ask for permission to use it? Why do we have to leave it in? If it's not gonna be used that much, I mean, can't they just come back to the city council and ask for approval?
Creates another layer of.
Well, I mean, it might be a layer that we wanna have there.
Sure.
To protect the money.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yeah, I think if we're going to use the facade improvement funds, I think those should be coming through the committee set to approve the facade improvement funds. I think the concern here is now the art commission could decide to go into that fund. And we did state previously that was to be taken out. That was part of the conversation. And I think I would want to see that language removed. I think the way it's laid out in the art plan, where it says, you could make this adjustment in the future, I don't have a problem with that, keeping in options that are available for that sort of thing. But for the language here, and especially with the language of without limitation, I think calling out that fund does not seem like the right way to go.
I think we have Ms. Elias here who might address that.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say that David and I went back and forth on this a little bit today, and the intention was to preserve flexibility in the plan itself for the future. I can see why the ordinance language might be a little bit confusing. I don't have heartache about taking it out, and I don't think it's the only authority you would need if you chose in the future to use the facade improvement money and the TIF improvement money. So I think substantively, you're probably not taking any authority away from yourself or from the future, but I can see why the language is confusing. And so whichever way the council decides, I think is fine. I don't know if David has anything to add, but.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is there was obviously a lot of discussion about this when we first presented it a few weeks back. And honestly, my notes were kind of all over the place on it. So when we draft ordinances like this, and I apologize if you hear my dogs barking right now. When we draft ordinances, we try to make them forward-thinking and preserve as much authority as possible to you. The way it's put in there is permissive, if, it's from time to time language, in the discretion of language. So it's really up to you. It can be in there, it cannot be in there. It doesn't obligate you to use it. It just says that among the various sources of funds for these kinds of things, that could be one of them.
Mr. Wendt?
Yeah, as a point of clarification, because I want to understand, because I think we're all trying to get to the same thing. And like an example, if like La Primavera was being redone, now it's in the cultural corridor. Certainly they probably apply for TIF because it's within the TIF. They'd certainly probably do facade because the outside of that building needs some help and those sorts of things. But they're also required to either have an art portion or commit 80 cents on the dollar for whatever their portion is of the development. I just don't want situations where like, hey, well, they're getting facade money, and whether you're using it for the facade or, in one pocket, out the other pocket, and now they're putting 80 cents of the dollar into the art plan, well, that's really just our facade money that's going in. I know you could segregate them and everything. I just don't want situations where they become ineligible for facade because they are also donating money or putting money into the art fund and are subject to this ordinance. I just want to make sure we've got clarification on that people don't go back and read the minutes on this and say, oh, anything that's in this, they can't get facade money because I don't think that's our intent.
Mr. Timian.
Alex, I'm reaching into my memory. Wasn't there a discussion that the facade program would be outside of the TIF districts? And so by the art section mostly being in TIF 1 in the downtown areas, the two funds can't really intermingle anyway, because they're geographically separate in different, if we're focusing facade on other parts of the city.
We haven't said that.
I know that this discussion has happened, and so there might be an intent, but nothing concrete.
Yeah.
We talked about that as related to the Sorbeck lots, and that's how we decided things for them.
Right.
I think going further, we'd have to go through staff to make any of that kind of policy permanent, but that was the intent for one particular project.
Well, and we made that at
Mr.
KOT
Wendt.
last night, and that's probably what you're thinking.
Right.
Because we said that's how it should be set up.
Okay. So you had something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I
Mr.
just wanted
Vitas?
to add that, this is obviously it's a brand new board. It's not part of your current fiscal plans for fiscal 2022. As you look forward to working with this group of individuals you appoint, they will, of course, projects will generate revenues, possibly. They either art contributions or dollar revenues. But if facades is an issue and you think it's important, again, how you fund your boards, how you fund your commissions, this is one of those that has revenue that can be generated, but you can also provide revenue to it. And I would suggest that, at least initially for 2022, because they'll get going and they'll have no resources. So we'll have to wait forever for a project possibly. You don't know when the projects are going to pop. And as those projects come forward, they may generate revenue, but in the meantime, public art will need some level of funding to get off the ground. So I'm going to encourage you to consider that as a part of the 2022 discussions as well.
So we're at calling the question or making a motion to amend.
Your Honor, I'd like to amend the motion to delete all references to the facade program.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Waldron, seconded by Alderman O'Brien. Discussion? Mr. Schmidt?
We never called the question, so we can't amend it.
Oh.
I move to adopt the plan as presented by staff.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion by Alderman Wendt, seconded by Alderman Timian. Discussion?
Your Honor?
Yes.
I would like to make an amendment to remove the references to the revenue from the facade program.
Second.
All right, motion by Alderman Waldron, seconded by Alderman O'Brien. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of this amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
All right, you caught the numbers?
I've got just the one. Thank you.
Seven ayes, 1 nay. That motion passes. Yes, sir, Mr. Wendt.
It's another Scrivener's error. It says from River Drive from 12th Street to 34th Avenue, and I think it means to 34th Street.
It's been fixed. That was caught and it's been fixed.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so now,
Your Honor?
yes, sir, Mr.
I would
Wolf.
like to make another amendment.
Yes?
I'm sure that discussion will follow. On page 7, section D, number 2, it talks about the annual allocation equal to 2% of the city's total annual capital improvement project budget for certain capital improvement projects in downtown Moline Public Art Program area. I think I discussed it last time. I'm not in favor of cycling off any funds related to infrastructure. I just think we're going to need all the dollars we can have to take care of it. So my amendment would be to delete that portion of this proposed ordinance.
Is there a second?
Maybe a little clarification.
He wants to delete number 2 under D.
I've been there, Waldron.
I know.
D, source of funds, number 2.
Okay.
I don't hear a second.
Second.
Okay, there is a second, Mr. Williams. Discussion. So this would leave the only sources to fund this program if we deleted that as a budget allocation as recommended by the commission from our general fund, correct?
And financial grants and other donations and gifts, of course.
Right. So that I'm thinking of the chart. The chart that shows the stability of funding would not be there necessarily. Yes, sir, Mr. Went.
And just for clarification, this is only projects that are along those
Correct.
corridors, not 2% of our entire CIP
I realize that.
or anything, just for those. I'm not in favor of it, but I just want to make sure that's clear.
All right, Ms. Elias?
I apologize, Mayor, if I could just add one clarification. It's not necessarily that it's 2% of the amount. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's coming out of the capital improvement program budget. I think that's just a way of calculating, and of course I'm not the city's finance expert, but it's the concept of those types of improvements having a aesthetic benefit as well. Just a clarification.
So you could fund it for non-CIP money out of general or whatever else.
Overall, same pot though.
Any other questions? Comments? So we need to vote on this amendment. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
All right. One
That was
aye,
nice of
7
you.
nays.
I want him to get his
That
argument.
motion does not carry.
So D2 stays?
Yes.
Okay, got it. I'm removing public facade, facade improvement, but, okay, this will stay, okay. I'm just making notes as I go.
Thank you. So now we are back to the main item in question, the ordinance itself. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
7 ayes, 1 nay. That motion passes.
Great job.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Silverman. Thank you, Ms. Elias. And anyone who had a hand in it. Okay, number 2, Illinois Department of Human Services Intergovernmental Agreement for a Tobacco Grant.
Sure, I just very quickly, this is the continuation of an ongoing program and grant-funded program with respect to curtailing the sale of tobacco products to minors. And we would look for approval for the submission of the grant for $5,280.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Moyer, seconded by Alderman Williams. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Number 3, BNSF Railway Company license for installation of an 8-foot wide sidewalk across the railroad crossing at 34th Street.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. This relates to a project, the second half of a project that took place earlier, and this would be for the installation of an 8-foot wide sidewalk at 34th Street. This is in keeping with working with the railroad and in the future looking for this to possibly lead to improvements, the center median leading to improvements to remove the whistle stop or have a silent zone. So as we work with the railroad on the different crossings, this would allow for safer pedestrian crossing for those on foot, those in vehicles, as well as those on bicycles. And we look for approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, motion to approve by Alderman Went, seconded by Alderman O'Brien. Any discussion?
I just want to say I appreciate staff being proactive on things like this because when the train eventually comes, to be able to have these things in place in advance are going to make all the difference in the world. So
Thank you. Don't worry, I will call on you, Mr. Went, when you raise your hand. All right, number 4, Granicus Agreement meeting. Oh,
We can get a vote.
sorry. I'll get it together here today. Okay. So, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion passes. Number 4, Granicus Agreement meeting, the agenda meeting management software.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, this one gives me great pleasure to present to you tonight because it will address one of my big concerns about streamlining operations in the executive office as well as the executive office as it interrelates with the other 12 operating departments throughout the city, as well as all the council members and the other boards and commissions. very shortly, we're recommending that we go with Granicus after the city clerk and her team of experts sat down and evaluated software from both Granicus, iCompass, MuniCode, and Civic Clerk. They came back with a recommendation to go with Granicus on their own, and I applaud them for that. I've worked with this company in the past, and I can assure you that this is one of the best software products for managing our agenda preparation process, which is a real bonus for the city. You can see that it's $11,100 for 2021 as an expense, and then for the 2 subsequent years, it's an equal amount, and there's no increase over the life of the 3-year agreement.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Alderman Wentz, seconded by Alderman Schmidt. Any discussion? Mr. Moyer?
I guess I see that this is also on the council agenda for approval tonight.
I'm sorry?
It's also on the council agenda for approval tonight.
Yes.
Is that something that's going to work on all of our computers then? Is it going to be like live updated, or, I mean, how's this? I guess I'm not really familiar with how it works and how it's going to change the way we do what we do.
Well, I think what, I can explain it best by saying this. The process we have right now is heavily manual. Everything that's being done is being done using Word documents, and it's being all manipulated constantly by the city clerk. She spends most of her time, as these meetings come forward, just spending days working on agendas, and then it all depends on when the information is coming into us. What the system will do is it will actually create a user-friendly environment that we will define, and we define the entire process. So it's a process improvement from the time that a department decides to create an agenda item to the time that the council directs us to do something, to create a future agenda item. We create that agenda item in Granicus. Then from there, we have a timeline that we establish for an internal approval process. So as it leaves, let's say, a middle manager to a director, or from a director, it's coming to me. For me, it's going to go up the chain finally to the attorney, and then it's going to, or we haven't decided, attorney first, administrator last, that we're going to decide. It'll actually get to the clerk, and it'll be done. The entire agenda will be prepared with all the backup documents. You'll then have access to that, and it'll be just a simple push of a button for her, and bam, everything goes out. And you can actually see the entire approval process by date, end time, everything.
Yeah, I read that. It all sounds great and everything. I'm just curious, will it work on, our phones, or, I mean, how are we gonna interact with that?
It will. It's a separate portal that you'll go into from the website. You'll be able to search in there, and eventually, most of what you're looking for will be in that one portal. But right now, you can look in Laserfish, and then you'll be able to look in there too. It assigns project numbers, so that if you're searching by project number, you can find anything associated with that. It also, attached to your agenda, will be all of the supporting documents that you want, as well as the draft minutes. So everything you need to look at, you don't have to follow links to get there. Everything should be right there. And then once you approve it here, I just click a button that it was approved and moves forward for the council for the next time. So it should be very efficient. We're touching it less. The departments have a little more control.
And I saw that does it allow us to make our own notes? It kind of lives on our own system, right?
I'm sorry.
Allow them to make their own notes and live on their own system.
Then we can fully search it. I think it's great. I mean, if it's going to save all that work, I think it's awesome. So I just wanted to make sure it was still going to work.
Mr. Wett, and then Mr. Schmidt.
Is it web-based? Is that?
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what
It's in the cloud.
So on here, are they waiving like the one-time setup fees and all that kind of stuff to do that? And do we envision, because I'm most of these kind of companies have, and you can do this add-on and are there things that we're thinking that we eventually are going to add on to this system, or is it this is all they do and nothing else?
There are other things, but they're all agenda and board management pieces. The board management function is really nice because as we have people appointed to boards, it'll show, we'll be able to easily see when they were first appointed, how many times they were reappointed, where, and
awesome.
all of that stuff will be really nice because that's been a struggle. And then As far
Contract.
as additions, there is one thing, and Alderman Schmidt was actually on our team, and we kind of took a look at this and decided not to do it right away, but there is a function where you could actually vote from your tablet.
Yeah, that's what I said.
And it'll show up. We decided not to do that, to start with the basic first, and then we can always add that later on. I think it might be nice eventually, but for now, I'll continue to
But you are getting board management.
get the vote. Yes, we are. That is included. Some of the others had add-ons. It was included in this one.
Awesome.
And then normally there's a 6% increase annually.
Yep.
And so they worked with us, and as long as we signed a 3-year contract, we actually asked for that because it takes about 6 months possibly to implement and get this ready to use. So
Yep.
we're going to be committing to this for at least a few years. So then we asked if they would just not raise the price. And so that's why we're bringing it to you. Even though it's $11,100 this year, we're doing it for 3 years.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yeah, I did have the chance to kind of review and sit in on a couple of the presentations. And in addition to all the work it'll save the staff, which I think is where the real strength is, for those pieces that come through, which it'll be on both, there's both web interface and an app interface. But you can click. So you can open up the traditional PDF like we read our materials, or you can click around so that you're not having to scroll down and up through the 240-page PDF all meeting.
Yes.
And I think and that's just as easy for us, but the whole system is introducing easy pieces like that where if you need that old-fashioned PDF, you can print it out, no problem, but it will do that, and it seemed like a very, very good system, very, everything they asked, could it do this, it all came down to yes, they could.
Mr. Timian?
I'm mostly asking, as a web developer, is there an integration with our Civics Plus platform? I'm thinking of the board appointments. Currently, that's all manually listed on the website. If we did it in this application, is there some sort of integration where it would be instantly available to the public? Or is that still going to be a manual?
That would still be manual. And that
Okay.
was one of the things that was the biggest plus to going with Civic Clerk, which was a Civic Plus solution. But there were a lot of other things that they didn't offer. They were much more expensive. And we waited weeks and didn't even get a final proposal from them. So we felt that was indicative to the type of service we might receive.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Number 5, amending Chapter 27 purchasing of the Moline Code of Ordinances regarding responsible bidder requirements.
Move to approve.
Second?
There's been a motion by Alderman O'Brien, seconded by Mr. Timian. Discussion. Mr. Moyer?
Yeah, so I'm all in favor of workforce education, development, and so forth. I'm a little bit concerned, though. I guess my concern is just based on just economics, supply and demand. We don't seem to have a ton of competition for our bidding already. What do we have, like 2-3 bids on a typical construction project? And I'm just thinking, with all this infrastructure money that's coming in and all the demand for work that's going to be in the area, I'm concerned about adding this extra requirement on and what it might do to drive up prices. I don't really completely understand that, and so I'm wondering if maybe we make a motion. I guess what I'd like to do is perhaps make a motion to, there's a provision that this applies to all projects that are 25,000 and more. And I guess I'd like to make a motion to increase that to 500,000, so that this would, at least in the early stages of this, maybe we look at this as just impacting our larger jobs, where perhaps at that level, workforce development ought to be a priority. So I guess the motion would be to change that minimum requirement to just our larger jobs at 500,000 and above.
So we have a motion for an amendment.
I'll
Mr.
second
Moore. Is there there's a second by Mr. Went. So discussion on this amended motion. Mr. O'Brien?
What is the evidence that this is going to drive up the cost? There is none. I mean, the contractors that you're talking about, I guess I'm looking around, I don't see them. We usually use, to the city of Moline's credit, we do use a lot of union contractors. I think that's a great thing, but I think we have to insist on training for the employees that are working on our sites. I think that's, I think it's one of our goals at the city. I think we want to make sure that people can get decent jobs here and have appropriate training. Because if you don't have appropriate training, you're going to have accidents and things of that nature. And you're going to have substandard work. So I will not vote for the amendment.
To speak to your question, I know there is good research on the fact that it does actually create some more bid competition, and that's led from the Illinois Economic Policy Institute that's out there to be researched. Yes, Mr. Went.
And I appreciate that, and that is maybe statewide or in Chicago or whatever, but in our microcosm, that hasn't been the case. I asked for some proof on what the difference since we did the responsible bidder. I know it's been a very short time, but I'm not sure if that's necessarily in our small pond as compared to the entire state. But I do agree with this, and I don't have issues with training and all of those things, but if we're talking about like our sidewalk infill projects, you know, that may be $100,000 worth of stuff. That's a lot different than a major road construction project. And so I think that increasing this, you know, 500,000, if that's the right number, that's great. But certainly 75,000 is almost nothing. I mean, that's not even, like I said, our sidewalk infills. And I think that there's a big difference between somebody coming in and installing sidewalks versus somebody doing a deep sewer line replacement project.
Thank you. Mr. Waldron.
Maybe somebody can help me or answer. I know the state has an RBO. What is the state's threshold for a project? I realize they're much bigger than us, but do they have a threshold on their RBO? Does anybody know?
It's a good question for Margaret.
I don't know, but I will find out.
That's a great question.
Thank you.
Yes,
Your Honor.
Mr. Timian.
Margaret, I am a bit confused. The ordinance mentions 25,000, and our current one is 75,000, but I don't see that number being changed in the proposed updates. So was 25,000 a typo, or am I just, so we are planning on lowering the threshold?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're lowering it from 75 down to 25?
Mr. Went.
I guess to that, whose suggestion was that, and is that something that you're seeing throughout the state, a lowering of that threshold on responsible bidder?
So we have seen that with other of our communities, so we incorporated that. Plus, it seemed consistent with the spirit of the ordinance amendment.
To reduce it to 25?
Yes, in order to, support the trades and training and workers here in Moline, and to attract those types of workers here.
Any other questions on this amended motion? Hearing none, all in favor of the amended motion?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
All right, that motion does not pass, 2 to 6.
3 to 5.
What?
3-5.
3-5. Oh, I'm so sorry. I
Can we just do a roll call?
Yes, I'll
vote, you
do a
mind?
roll call. That's
Thank you.
fine.
Alderman O'Brien,
Nay.
Waldron,
Nay.
Schmidt,
Nay.
Williams,
Aye.
Macias,
Nay.
Wentz,
Aye.
Timian,
Nay.
Moyer,
Aye.
3 ayes, 5 nays. Thank you.
Okay, so we're back to the main motion. Mr. Waldron.
I'm a little confused. We are at $25,000 now in our RBO, and we're going Or we're at
No.
75 going to 25.
Thank you.
Is that what you understood
Mr.
when you were
Wen?
voting?
I'd like to keep it, I'd make an amendment to keep it at 75,000.
Okay, is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
All right, motion by Alderman Waldron, seconded by Alderman Went. Any discussion? All those in favor? I think we'll just do roll call for this. It's easier here. Roll call, please.
Alderman O'Brien,
Nay.
Waldron,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Macias,
Aye.
Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer,
Aye.
7 ayes, 1 nay.
Okay. That motion passes. That motion passes. So the threshold will be 75,000. So we're back to the main motion. Question, Mr. Went.
Yeah, so, thank you, Your Honor. And I think I brought this up the last time we kind of talked about this. The way that this reads currently, a non-union shop, if we pass this and they say, okay, I want to follow your rules, because I've asked union people, I've asked the trades, I've asked for examples of anyone outside of the union shops that meet this requirement of having 5 people graduate all of the last 5 years. There aren't any other options out there, or nobody's been able to provide me. So what we're saying is a non-union shop, even if they say, we passed this today, and they say, yes, we are going to follow and we're going to send 10 people every year. It takes them 4 years to get through an apprenticeship program, and then it'll be an additional 5 years of that. So it's 9 years down the road that a non-union company could bid on anything in the city of Moline. And so to your point regarding it not costing anything more or anything, simple economics. When you have a reduced competition, prices increase, and with increased prices result in less work and less CIP getting done. And so while I appreciate the apprenticeship and workforce development, what I'd like to do is make an amendment to this that says, provided that 1 year from today, that within the next 365 days that they have at least one person enrolled in an apprenticeship program, and then moving forward they have at least one person enrolled in an apprenticeship program every 2 years, that they will be eligible in the city of Moline. I think that's a reasonable route, because otherwise you are excluding them for 9 years as soon as this is passed. And I don't think that that's what the residents of Moline want.
So there's a motion by Alderman Went,
I'll second.
seconded by Alderman Moyer. Discussion.
So let me get this straight. They can come to us and say, we are gonna start an apprenticeship program. And
Or have somebody enrolled in an apprenticeship.
we have a year to enroll one person in an apprentice program? I mean, that seems pretty going against what this ordinance is for. See, that's where you and I disagree. I don't think that the sidewalk, the quality of sidewalks should be any different than anything else. I think we need high quality on everything, and we need training. The way it drives down the cost is everybody gets trained, there's less accidents, there's higher quality of work. You have to come in and replace, the sewer, you have to replace everything every 10 years, or 5 years, or whatever it is. Whatever we've had projects like that before where they have to dig it up and redo it. Don't give me that look.
All right, we're
But
not
I
gonna
believe
engage in that kind of chatter.
We should insist on the quality.
Point taken. Mr. Moyer, your hand was raised.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, for some of these shops, though, they just buy into a program, right? They would just pay a fee to be a member of a program. They wouldn't necessarily have to have any of their own employees then engaged in an educational program. So that would be, in essence, requiring them to put a specific company actually, that's non-union, to put somebody in training would actually almost be preferred, would it not?
Well, if you look at it from the angle I mentioned a few weeks ago, that's more bang for the public dollar because you're getting people trained. And there are tax incentives for people in training. The state has a program for companies to use for students or apprentices in this manner. So, I mean, when you talk about what the public is getting, if you're gonna get higher quality and you're gonna get people trained to have jobs, then there's actually, that's a benefit as opposed to a negative on one hand. Yes, sir?
This is really about closing a loophole that exists in our existing RVO. Because our RVO already says you have to belong to a program. However, that program is not required to have any graduation. It's only required to exist on paper. So this is forcing people to go out and seek a program that actually graduates students. Can we guarantee that every single company is going to be sending their people through, that every worker that steps on a job is going to be doing that? No, we can't do that. But what we can say is that they have an access to that and that they're partnering with that. And there are non-union programs. I can't say that there's one for every single trade. I can't, but we do know there are examples of some of the paper programs have, in some of their divisions, they have graduates.
But none of them meet the 5 in the last 5 years. I've asked for it and I haven't been provided from anybody 5 in the last 5 years. Nobody's been able to provide me with one. And so that becomes the problem. And I don't disagree with you, but there's no requirement that any particular company that is a union shop, that they actually put anything through the apprentice. They may not have an apprentice for 5 or 6 years. They just happen to be part of a program that does graduate people. And so what I'm saying is that it's either or. You do it, or you actually have to prove that you are enrolling people in an apprenticeship program. And to your point, there's incentives, and so they are required. If they want to bid and go with one in Moline, they actually have to show either that they're part of a program that graduates 5 over the last 5 years or whatever, of which the only thing is a union shop right now. No one's ever been able to provide me with anything other than the union shops. Or they have to have, through junior colleges or those other ones, actually have to have somebody enrolled and paying them and having them go through the program. If they don't, then they're not eligible.
Point taken. Any other comments or questions? All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
This is on the amendment.
Yeah.
On the amendment, yes. Mr. Wentz amendment about years and people to graduate.
Alderman Went, would you mind restating that?
That either they meet what's in there, or the alternative would be that within the next year that they have at least one individual that is enrolled in an apprenticeship program, and then after that, that every 2 years they have to enroll at least one individual in an apprenticeship program to be eligible under our RBO.
Okay.
Thank you.
So roll call. Alderman O'Brien.
Nay.
Waldron.
Nay.
Alderman Schmidt.
Nay.
Williams.
Aye.
Macias.
Nay.
Went.
Aye.
Timian.
Nay.
Moyer.
Aye.
3 ayes, 5 nays.
All right, that amendment does not pass. Yes, Mr. Went.
Just point of information, and then I do have one other. Margaret, did you write this this amendment?
So we use the suggested language by Alderman O'Brien.
You wrote this language?
I did not write the language, no.
Who wrote this language? Where did it come from?
It's an amendment that is, I believe it's from Andy's here with the Foundation for Fair Contracting. It's
Andy,
yeah,
did you write this language?
I was sure he's
So what organization is that? I want to make sure that it's.
Sorry, can I introduce myself?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
that sounds good.
I'm Andy Blair. I'm the regional manager for the Union Iowa Foundation Fair Contracting Residents.
School board member.
To Alderman Wentz question that the amendment presented was written by attorneys. I will, if you don't mind, take a little liberty in my comments here. Mr. Wentz says that no non-union apprenticeship programs exist or they don't exist. That's not true. We actually sent him information today. I'm sorry I was on vacation last week with my family, so I didn't see it citing that information. But
Hey, don't say that I hid it. That is ridiculous. What time did you send it to me?
9:31 this morning. Mr. Moyer got it. I sent it to Mr. Moyer.
I don't have it.
Jeff Holland sent it at 9:31 this morning.
I don't have
To
it.
your point,
Well, I don't want you to besmirch Alderman Moyer or myself to say that we are hiding something. That was out of line.
So we're not gonna engage in that language. Please focus on the
so,
facts.
I mean, the electrician, I've been provided information. The same program that was mentioned by Alderman Schmidt does graduate apprentices. They graduated in 2017, 111 electricians, 152 in 2018, 153 in 2018. Plumbing, they graduated 20 plumbers, 2017, 29 in 18, 35 in 2019. So clearly where they invest, they graduate.
There you go.
Yeah, Mr. Went.
Is there laborer, operating engineer, millwright, or carpentry?
Like I said, where they invest, they graduate.
I'm asking, of
They're
those
not-
four,
They're not.
there's no other organization in the state that meets those other than the union shops.
I'm not 100% clear.
Okay, that was the question I had asked, and I just want clarification because you indicated that we were hiding things. I want want it to be clear
All right,
and on the
so-
record of what had happened.
Right.
We've gotten that clarification. We have 2 questions per councilman per question.
And so,
Are there any other questions?
I'd like to
on
make a
this
motion.
Hang on, let me remind myself and anyone else who's wondering where we're at with the motion. We've taken 3 amendment votes, correct?
Yep.
And so we are currently discussing the main
The main,
motion
yep.
of number 5. All right, so Mr. Wendt would like to make a motion.
So with this, if it looks like it's going to be moving forward, I think we're in a situation in which Moline is on the bleeding edge of this because, and I guess another point of inquiry, are there any other communities that have passed this within our county or within the surrounding counties of Moline?
I don't know.
I think Rockford has, right? Hasn't Rockford passed one? Aurora?
So nothing within our county or within the surrounding counties of Rock Island County?
Doesn't
And
come to
clearly
mind,
nothing
no.
on the other side of the river?
No, it wouldn't be
Okay.
over there.
So what I would like to do is make an amendment to this that says that this will go into effect once Rock Island and East Moline pass a mirroring ordinance that they make the same requirement of their RBO as well.
Is there a second?
No.
I'll second it.
Okay,
a
motion by Alderman
question.
Wendt, second by Alderman Moyer. Discussion.
Is this your last amendment to this?
We can only entertain questions one at a time, so you're not under an
I think the
obligation.
residents of Moline, this is a very big discussion, and I think that that's important that we have the discussion.
Well said.
All right, so
Thank you.
I have the floor right now, and is there any discussion about this motion? Mr. Waldron.
I understand what you're trying to do when you say a mirroring ordinance. Would those both, let's say East Moline and Rock Island, would they both need to be at 75,000 too, or could they go to 150, 25, whatever they wanted? And would that, in your mind, mirror the ordinance?
I think at that point, we'd probably come back and just be like, yes, that's close enough.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments? All right, those in favor, roll call, please. Or not those in favor, just roll call, please.
Alderman O'Brien,
This is on the amendment, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Because I need to be reminded where that'd be a nay.
Alderman Waldron,
I'll go with aye on that one.
Schmidt,
Nay.
Williams,
Aye.
Macias,
Nay.
Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Nay.
Moyer,
Aye.
4 ayes, 4 nays. Mayor, would you like to vote?
I don't need to vote on that one. That one just dies. I don't need to vote, that dies.
Well, you have the
You don't need to, but
opportunity
you
that
have
you
the
can
option.
vote if
I'm
you'd
not
like.
going to use that opportunity, Mr. Went.
I
Thank
just
you.
want to make sure you knew the rules.
Yep. So we're back to the main motion. Any just further discussion?
I guess
Mr. Went.
I think that this does put the city of Moline at a competitive disadvantage with all the funds that are going to be coming out, that we are going to be in a situation where we are going to not have as many people bidding on our projects in Moline. And I think that that's going to raise the cost and therefore result in less getting done for the residents of Moline. And I believe in a fair playing field, and I'm disappointed that we don't think that we should be working on the same level as our neighbors, and that it's going to cost us, the residents of Moline, more money.
Yes, Mr. Moyer.
I just want to say that I support this in general and principle, and I really want to be fully behind it, but I also, I do agree that maybe we're not at a level playing field and that it is going to cost us money. I was kind of hoping we could move a little bit slower, but, you know, I guess I just wanted to put that on the record that
Okay, thank you. Mr. Schmidt.
I think that the benefits that this ordinance, the benefits that making sure we have the best workers possible doing the work for Moline is what's going to save us money. And I think when there has been research, when there's been looks back at communities not in Chicago, not through the whole state, but just through northern Illinois and through northern Indiana, it was found that this led to more bidders coming to contracts and an equal or a little bit better level of competitiveness. So I think the trend we've seen has spoken to that. And I think that we just, you know, it's not about what East Moline's going to do or what Rock Island's going to do. It's about getting the best work for Moline. And I think that's why I'm very strongly in support of this.
Mr. Timian.
Thank you, Your Honor. To piggyback a little bit, we've discussed a lot over the last few months of our strategic plan, the pool upgrades, the parks, being the best in the Quad Cities. That should extend to our infrastructure as well, even if it has a slightly higher cost. Having an apprenticeship requirement that is not easy to get around helps facilitate that, and I'm highly supportive for that reason. Thank you.
Mr. Macias.
And my thought process is, as the word gets out, more and more of these bidders will start getting people through these programs, and it's only going to help in the future. Could we see some hurdles initially? Maybe. But I think in the long run, if we spend so much money with bidders all the time, sometimes they do a great job, sometimes they don't. And if we get a different pool of bidders that we know are going through these programs, we might end up seeing a great return on our investment with just better work and safer working conditions in general. So I'm supportive of this. Thank you.
Any further comment? All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
So we're voting on this as presented.
Correct. With the $75,000 threshold.
But I thought that's what it was
No,
within
No, it
there.
wasn't.
That was a change. Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Okay, Alderman O'Brien,
Aye.
Waldron,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Williams,
Nay.
Macias,
Aye.
Went,
Nay.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer.
nay.
5 ayes, 3 nays.
Okay, that motion passes. We do have an other this evening, correct?
Correct.
Please remind me who's presenting.
Mr. Kuhlenbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Kuhlenbeck.
Your Honor, Council. The other I have for you today is a grant opportunity that was, we discussed at Week Street on Friday. Kind of came up quick on us, but it's a TASA grant that is the transportation alternative set aside program. possibility of $342,650. Grant application Friday, August 20th. Presentation to council committee, a matching fund for 5.9%. What we are applying for is a portion of the Morgan Park walk path through the Morgan Park area that's been discussed at staff and council level several times. Sorry. And
Can I interrupt you, Mr. Kuhlenbeck? Sorry about that. That's also been brought up at the listening post at Prospect Park. It was one of those, we saw it over and over, so thank you for bringing it.
Sure, yeah, and this is an obvious connector from neighborhood to schools, neighborhood to neighborhood. The traffic on that roadway is very fast, much faster than the coastal limit.
So hard.
Start over.
Talking into the same, I just thought that was funny stuff.
Yeah, much faster.
What was the
than,
dollar amount again?
Available funds, $343,600. Total project of this is $1 million in excess, so cutting into the sections so that we can end at approximately 209 locations, street to street, block to block, we'd like to see. These funds will be available fiscal years 24, 25, our long-term CIP will match those construction years. Up until that point, we will look for alternative grant funding, the second leg, hopefully do them all same year, if not same year, back to back years. This is first step in the application for this grant. Steps.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Alderman Went, seconded by Alderman Macias. Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Went.
I just want to thank you for getting on the horse and getting this done. This is obviously something we've been working on for a while to make this work, and we need to get those right-of-way stuff squared away. But I think that there's going to be a huge benefit, especially for Ward 2, where Garfield was closed, and those kids need to get over to Hamilton, and it's just going to make things so much safer. So thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes.
Thank you, Joe.
Do we have people in the hallway for public comment?
I believe that's for the council agenda.
For the council agenda, okay, thank you. We will,
Right.
yes, got it. Okay, so we will close out this committee of the whole and move right into our council meeting. Pledge of allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Was there an invocation, Mr. O'Brien?
No.
All right, roll call, please.
Alderman Williams,
Present.
Macias,
Present.
Went,
Present.
Timian,
Present.
Moyer,
Present.
O'Brien,
Present.
Waldron,
Present.
Schmidt.
Present.
Your Honor, I request approval of Committee of the Whole Council and Executive Session Minutes of July 27th, 2021, and appointments made during Committee of the Whole on August 10th, 2021. Second reading ordinances. Council Bill 3018-2021, an ordinance amending Chapter 2 Administration, Article 4, Boards and Commissions, Division 7, Human Rights Commission of the Moline Code of Ordinances. Council Bill 3019-2021, an ordinance amending Chapter 4, Alcoholic Liquor of the Moline Code of Ordinances. Council Bill 4007-2021, a special ordinance authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to an amendment to the Development and Economic Incentive Agreement between the City of Moline and Illinois Domus, LLC, for the development project and to execute any necessary agreements referenced therein, and authorizing all appropriate city officers and staff to do all things necessary to complete each of the city's responsibilities pursuant to said agreement. Resolutions. Council Bill 1162-2021, a resolution authorizing approval of a request for a streetlight at the intersection of 9th Avenue and 37th Street and 1500 block of 43rd Street.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion to approve by Alderman Went, seconded by Alderman Waldron. Roll call, please.
Alderman
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien,
Aye.
Waldron,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Macias,
Aye.
Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays. And that motion passes. Non-consent agenda, second reading ordinances. Council Bill 3020-2021, an ordinance authorizing the issuance of taxable general obligation refunding bonds, Series 2021A and Series 2021B of the City of Moline, Illinois.
Move to approve?
Second.
Motion by Alderman Went, seconded by Alderman Schmidt. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Alderman O'Brien,
Aye.
Waldron,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Macias,
Aye.
Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays. And that motion passes. Resolutions. Council Bill 1025-2021, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to a licensing agreement with Endicott Estates Condos Homeowners Association to install a line of trees on the 53rd Street right-of-way at 3728 53rd Street.
Move to approve?
Second.
All right, there's been a motion to approve. I do need to state, though, I believe we need a motion to take this off the table.
Correct.
Move to untable this.
Second to untable.
Thank you. Alderman Wentz and Alderman Waldron. So now that it is untabled, we now can entertain the
Well,
motion.
we'd actually have to vote
What?
to untable it.
Oh, that's right. Excuse me, what?
They're moving it
Oh,
from the
Lord,
table.
you're right.
Because
Thank
otherwise,
you.
just the two of us could just run
We're
around
we're
chat.
getting to the witching hour, right? All right, so, any discussion on the table, untabling? So, roll call, please.
Alderman O'Brien,
Aye.
Waldron,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Macias,
Aye.
Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays.
Move to approve?
All right.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Went and
Or call the
Mr.
question.
Waldron. Did you just call the question too? Okay. All right. Any discussion?
I'm sorry, who was the second on that?
Mr. Waldron.
Thank you.
Hearing none, roll call, please.
Alderman O'Brien,
Aye.
Waldron,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Macias,
Aye.
Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays. And that motion passes. Council Bill 1163-2021, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to an intergovernmental agreement to the City of Moline and the Illinois Department of Human Services, setting forth the terms for acceptance of a grant award to the police department in the sum of $5,280.
Move to approve Council Resolution 1163-2021.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Went, seconded by Alderman Schmidt. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Alderman O'Brien,
Aye.
Waldron,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Macias,
Aye.
Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays, and that motion passes. Council Bill 1164-2021, a resolution authorizing the city administrator to execute a 3-year agreement with Granicus for agenda and board management software in the amount of $33,300 to be paid in equal annual installments.
Move to approve 1164-2021.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Went, seconded by Alderman Macias. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Alderman O'Brien,
Aye.
Waldron,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Macias,
Aye.
Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays, and that motion passes. Council Bill 1165-2021, a resolution authorizing Quad City Arts to identify the City of Moline as primary partner on application to the National Endowment for the Arts for the Our Town Grant Program in the amount of $150,000 to fund public art projects of the Uptown Neighborhood Identification Sign, 15 Lights, and Play at Sylvan Island, and authorizing the mayor to sign a letter of support for submission with said grant application.
Move to approve 1165-2021.
Second.
All right, motion and by Alderman Went, seconded by Alderman Macias. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Alderman O'Brien,
Aye.
Waldron,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Macias,
Aye.
Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays, and that motion passes. First reading ordinances. Council Bill 3021-2021, an ordinance amending Chapter 30, Motor Vehicles and Traffic of the Moline Code of Ordinances, Appendix 10 thereof, parking prohibited at any time, by deleting 60th Street on both sides from Coal Town Road at a distance of 675 feet north, and adding in lieu thereof 60th Street on the east side from Coal Town Road at a distance of 675 feet north, and by adding 60th Street on the west side from Coal Town Road north to the east Moline border. And that is all I have this evening, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you so much. Miscellaneous business, Mr. Williams.
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Macias?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Mr. Went?
A couple of things. One, pickleball opening was amazing, and thanks to Alderman Moyer's daughter, I actually won a basket, so thank her very much. I owe her big time. Maybe I'll give her a pizza. It wasn't booze, so it's good. So that was great. Thank you, staff, everybody for coming out. It was amazing. The next thing, I sent a memo to everyone regarding, from Alderman Moyer and myself, regarding tiny homes and ADUs. So a little bit of a background. Prior to this, I've been working with Sean Chris trying to move this forward. Back in 2019, the council gave the Planning Commission a list of things to come back to us within the year of 2020, because we just wanted to move these things forward. Obviously, the pandemic hit and some things didn't happen as fast as we'd like, but tiny homes and ADUs seem to be a bit of it as a standstill. And so after meeting with the mayor and talking about kind of ways to move forward, we thought that it might be good to have a memo that outlines the benefits and what we as council feel are the principles we want to see as part of an ordinance to be adopted. I mean, these are, mention of these things are already in the strategic, I guess the draft of our strategic plan. I know it was mentioned by a number of the aldermen here. And so the idea is, we talked about these benefits. I sent out a link with additional information. But what I'd like to hear from you guys is, some feedback. If you want to add to these benefits, to these principles that you want to see, like one principle, for example, is if we're going to do this with ADUs, we do not want situations where people can rent both, because we don't want to basically turn duplexes in a single family neighborhood. But if you're living here and either a family member is living in the ADU or the accessory dwelling unit, or you are renting it out to supplement your income to help pay for your mortgage to make the home more affordable, or whatever that situation is, or maybe you want to downsize, you move into the ADU and you rent out the main house. Those things are options for our residents. And so, that's an example. But I'd like to hear from you guys of if you have anything to add to that. If not, what I'd like to do is, we've got kind of a conclusion and kind of a time frame, and I'd like to hear from staff as well if these are reasonable, that we have the discussion tonight, that we come back with a model, and I know that I think maybe Chris Mathias had actually had an ADU kind of model for Moline that we can build off of, but with the request that gets back to Planning Commission by September 14th and to us so that we can see it, and that Planning Commission get back to us by the end of November, so it gives plenty of time for them to review it and kind of move forward on it, but it doesn't wind up in kind of this black hole where it just never gets back to us. And then the hope is that maybe by the end of the year, we'll actually be able to pass something. So I'd like to open it up to hear from you guys, and that's why I wanted to get to you guys in advance.
Yes, Mr. Walden.
One thing that concerned me, and you hit on it with the being able to rent them both, what's your thoughts, or what does the ordinance say on vacation rentals?
So yeah, I think I put in there that they have to be rented for more than a month, so that you don't turn them into an Airbnb in your backyard.
Correct. Thank you.
I had a question. You mentioned down there that they should have their own address.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean, like as far as taxes with the county? What kind of implications could there be that might not know about?
So oftentimes it's, so then they can get their own separate mail. You can, if you want to, you can have the power be separately metered in those sorts of things. And to have that, typically you have to have a separate address for those things. As far as the county, it wouldn't be subdivided, so it'd still be the same parcel. So like, for instance, duplexes right now, you'll have one parcel number, it's taxed as one thing, but you have multiple addresses at the same thing. So it wouldn't affect now the only thing that it would affect, I mean, presumably if you built an ADU in your backyard, it would increase the value of your property, increase the EAV of Moline without us having to build more infrastructure, because we're still able to use the same street out front, the same sewer, the same water, and all those sorts of things. So it's environmentally sound because you're not building out into fields and those sorts of things to increase the housing. You're better utilizing the resources that you already have in place as a city, and makes things more affordable and gives more options, because you may be in a single family neighborhood, but there's rarely a 1-bedroom house in a single family neighborhood, or even in some places maybe not even a 2-bedroom, but there might be then as an ADU.
Mr. Timian.
I was maybe piggyback a little bit off of that. I'm a little confused. Is there a requirement that the ADU is separately metered, or is it allowable that it can be on the same gas and electric? Because that could be a barrier for some of these being created.
It absolutely can be on the same, and in fact, some ADUs, well, it's not even an ADU, but what we want in there that you could have attached. So you could have like a mother-in-law's that is attached to it and basically using all the same things. So you could, much like duplexes, sometimes they have a shared water heater and those sorts of things. You would have that flexibility, but the idea would be that it is a different address. So like if your mother-in-law lived there, I wouldn't be getting her mail every day. She could actually have her own post office.
Those kind of details, I think, have to come after the staff has been able to do their work and the planning commission has done their work and it comes back. The bigger question is this an idea that's a worthy pursuit, and what kind of timeline does make sense given all the work that is happening right now? So, Mr. Schmidt, you had your hand up first, I think.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent outline. I think you guys covered off on anything I had as major questions. The biggest question I think I have, which really is looking forward into what would staff review be coming back with, is I expect that not only do we have to have our own ordinance, but we probably have to clean up some other ordinances that currently would prohibit some of these pieces. And that's just part of the work that we have to do. And looking forward, I think just as far as timing, I certainly would have no problem on moving on it, just as long as we, I know we have a lot of things out there right now, so I just would defer to staff on like, when is this feasible, how do we get it done, and where to go. But we got a timeline to start from and see where
and there was a draft already out there that started.
Mr. Moyer.
Just to clarify, so the staff has actually already been working on this in the past. It's been it's been off the top of the list for a while. But the Plan Commission has definitely taken up ADUs at least 2 different meetings, and it kind of got stalled out. We just like to get it moving again, and this has worked really well in other communities. It's got to be done right. There will have to be other changes, but that's not for us.
I think Mr. O'Brien and then Mr. Vikas.
You wanted feedback, I'm telling you, I'm keeping an open mind. That's my feedback.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. All right, Mr. Vikas, do you have some thoughts?
I have no problem taking any direction from this council, and I don't think the staff does either, but we don't have the staff to address this. And I think all of you know that we're trying to recruit 3 people that would be responsible for really taking charge and leading this effort and this discussion. I, for one, know that those people are soon to be appointed, and a director to be appointed by the council as we move through that process. I ask you to give us the time to do that. I don't know what work was done before. I don't want to burden the folks down in community and economic development that have been holding the ship together and working with a multitude of issues with me almost daily, you know, in terms of the development community here and other problems that we encounter. So it's just piled higher and deeper, and I really am going to ask you to just wait until we have the staff. I think it's a great idea. I think the concept is being discussed all over the country, let alone the world. It's not new. It's a great idea. But there's a lot of questions. There's zoning questions. You know, which zoning districts do you allow it in? You know, R1, R2, R3, R4, R5. It'll work in some zoning districts. It won't work in other zoning districts. I already know that just from other cities I've managed. You know, there's not a lot of room where you don't have sufficient setbacks, side yard setbacks, front yard setbacks. Obviously, never in the front, but in the rear, you know, you have a very diverse community in terms of how everything is platted here. And when I look at the plat map of the city, I can see that, you know, some places it could work, some places you might not have the ability to put it in. And then you have to deal with the issue of, you know, adjoining neighbors, you know. Some may want it, some may say, heck no, I don't want to have that in that backyard back there. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of, not only research, but I think a lot of public discussion that should probably take place on an issue like that. Because you're introducing ancillary structures onto existing lots located between a garage perhaps and a principal structure. So you already have the ancillary. So just looking for some time. I won't belabor it, but looking for some time to get it. I think the timeline that I'm being told about is probably too short.
So I think we though could get consensus from this group that we're interested in this project. It just has to be feasible. And actually, that you make a good point on public feedback. It won't only come through Plan Commission. We'll probably need to make a concerted effort to talk about it in some fashion. So we can work on that. We can regroup and talk through that.
Bob, do you think there's a time frame in which you could then come back to us with a time frame? I mean, my concern, and this has nothing to do with you, but I know the aldermen that have been on the council before, there's a lot of things that have fallen in over the years into the black hole.
And there's many holes, and I have stepped into them. Okay, and I keep pulling myself out of them. So I just don't want another one. And I agree. But I know the staff is swamped. I do know they're swamped, a lot of them. You know, especially since we're understaffed. So, you know, I would say that. Do you think within a month you might be able to have an idea? I'm thinking legitimately my goal was to have a director appointed by this commission in late September, early October. And that's really fast. But we have the applicants. We're down to the 5. It's a question of setting up the interviews. But we're interviewing a lot of people. That's all we're doing is interviewing, which takes hours out of the day. I'm thinking probably, you know, give the new director and his 2 cohorts an opportunity to, 1, get to know each other, and 2, you know, we can pass this along as a project at the consensus of council. We could pass it on as a project to them once they're started, and let them come back and answer your question. I think we could do it this year, but I think it'll be later in the year before I think anything would ever be approved. I think there's a lot of steps here.
Do you think by November 1st?
Shoot for November 1.
Okay.
Shoot for November 1.
It goes on the top of mind list.
Fair
No,
enough.
I think it's an interesting concept, and I've read a lot about it in public management magazines and APA magazines, and you know, it depends on the community. You know, a lot of communities that have nowhere to grow any longer, they have gone to tiny houses as a way to try and, you know, provide additional housing for people in their community. So they do a lot in California. It's kind of where the concept got its, I think, where it took off.
Thank you so much. Mr. Timian.
Your Honor, I was just going to ask the city administrator about staffing and timing. So that answered my question.
Okay. You had something else? Sorry.
I did have one more thing. So one of the things, and I'm not sure if everybody is aware, you know, obviously stolen cars are not just property crimes. While car owners should lock their cars and prevent thefts, those that are stealing cars in some instances are actually killing people. This weekend, Cecilia Neche, she worked at Wilson. She was a special education paraprofessional, mother of 3, was killed by someone who had stolen a car and was out joyriding and those sorts of things. A few weeks ago, a man in Davenport came out, saw somebody was stealing a car from his driveway. He wound up getting hit, slammed into a pole, ran over, 2 skull fractures, brain trauma, and is having some real issues from my understanding, broken ribs. And a couple of years ago here in Moline, there was Tammy Luce, who on her birthday was killed just on John Deere Road and 16th Street by somebody who stole a car and slammed into him. Our police are doing a great job. I mean, they are going through, they are finding these people and obviously educating the public about locking their cars, but they're doing their job of apprehending and those sorts of things. But I've got some issues with prosecution, judge, and state law right now that is far too lenient on those individuals that are being caught. They're treating it, these are just merely property crimes, but these escalate. And so I call on the state's attorney, our representatives in Springfield, to take this seriously, pass laws that protect the law-abiding residents of the Illinois Quad Cities, and all of us who own vehicles to hold people responsible if they are doing these crimes, because they are escalating, and this needs to stop.
Thank you very much. Mr. Moyer. Or were you finished, Mr. Simeon?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Moyer.
I was going to mention pickleball, but I'll just, it's awesome. That's all, Your Honor. Thank
Mr.
you.
O'Brien.
Nothing.
Mr. Wald.
I was going to mention pickleball too. It was a great community effort and just wonderful. You haven't been down there at night, see people down there playing at night, probably down there right now.
Yep.
So it's a wonderful thing. Thank you to everybody that was involved, especially the park folks. That's it, Your Honor.
Thank you. Sir.
In addition to pickleball, since everyone else mentioned, I thought I might as well. But we also had a wonderful event last Tuesday down at the park for the National Night Out Against Crime. And the police department had put that on in conjunction with East Moline, and a lot of local vehicle drivers from our own public works team, from, I'm not sure if it was from the reserves or where they had some military vehicles down, and as well as just a good fun night out. Lots of people attending. I know my kids loved it. My son got to press the button to dump the trash, because they actually used the dump truck to clean up afterwards, which I thought was really really creative thinking. So it was a wonderful event and a great way and time to see the community, and I'm just really excited to see that happening and look forward to where it goes in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Vitas, anything? I have nothing. You have something?
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would bring up, I mean, and there's a lot to bring up, but I'll bring this up, is that, the broadband black hole, I mean, it's been going on for some time. I took possession of that project when Marty left, and have since assembled the files that were in multiple locations on that project. I think I have all the files now going back to the original discussions and perhaps even the original bid documents and proposals that came in. And this thing has gone through so many different gyrations that, I want you to know that I'm looking at it. I will get back to you in terms of what I think we should do about this broadband issue or this project. It's a serious, probably the single largest capital improvement, public works type project that the city would undertake. It's a voluminous project. It's a multi-year project. It's at least a $50 million project from talking to people in the industry. So that being said, I want to let you know I'm looking at it. I want the community to know we haven't forgotten about them. The federal government hasn't forgotten about it, because broadband's part of the ARPA funds. It's also part of the new infrastructure bill that's coming out. So I would not suggest that we rush I'm not comfortable picking up a project where it's been left off. It needs to be vetted better. And I did ask the former attorney that was here at the time to provide a synopsis of, his role and his knowledge of what took place. I do have that memo from him so that I at least have an idea of what happened from the beginning up until about the time he left. And then I have whatever, was handed to me by the former interim administrator. So I'm just giving an update that it's one of many things that we're juggling, but it's there and it won't fall into a black hole.
Thank you.
And I thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Okay, we will move to public comment. Who's ready? Sir, come to the podium, please. Just tell us your name.
John Barron, NFL States Condo Association, and the treasurer. Main trips. We've been at this for 2016 now. We came in and tore out all our landscape. The lodges are now devastated. Privacy, increased sound pollution. Bob was out there, Marty was out there, Christmas Bias was out there. And we requested a variance so we could put up fencing on a tree. So I think somebody's got us shut down another hole that we shouldn't be. So I implore every one of you, before you pass a vote, come out and look at our situation. It's devastating. I've got all kinds of documentation. I've got all kinds of pictures. But until you come out and look at 3:30 in the afternoon until 5 o'clock at night, the noise John Deere Road brings to our business, without trees or anything, we are bare ass naked, especially in our garages. People park their cars, they can't sit in their garage without the noise. I can't go out my front door with my grandson and hold his hand because the traffic coming up 53rd Street, they're speeders, they're noisy, and something's got to be done. You can't be put on the table anymore. I implore you. We pay more than $52,000 in real estate taxes per year collectively. And I don't see how any of you can vote without coming out and looking at our situation. I would happily get a bus hired to haul you all out there at once, so you could look and see. I asked in January that your engineering and our engineering come forth and get together and get a win-win. Taking fencing out of the whole picture is not a win. I apologize for raising my voice. This has gone on since 2016.
Very shortly, the resolution in the licensing agreement that we put in here, it says a line of trees is what we're looking for. And this would be a good thing if it could stay and it said fencing. And, but it doesn't. And the resolution only addresses 53rd Street. And we want to address 53rd Street and 30th Avenue. Now, the licensing agreement does address 53rd and 238. Now, we already have a licensing agreement with the city, and it is for 53rd Street. Let me read to you what it says. The licensee shall only acquire the right to utilize and maintain 2 ornamental brick columns, a portion of asphalt driveway, landscaping, fencing, and a brick wall. In my interpretation, we already have the right of fencing on 53rd Street.
Thank you very much for sharing those perspectives. If you have things,
Madam Mayor, may I leave this
yes,
with you and
please.
Bob?
Yep, we'll
Get
take that up.
the others on, 'cause there's tons more pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Pictures and words do not do the trick.
Got
You've
it.
gotta come out there and look at our situation.
Got it. Thank you very much. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for your time.
Mhm.
Thank you very much.
Any other public comment? Yes, sir.
My name is Don Griffin, and my neighbor here, Jim Garber. We're here in regards to the taking down the fences on Parsons Park. It's the only park in town that has ongoing traffic on all four sides, and we're concerned about the safety of our children. On 23rd Avenue, the buses fly by there at a high speed, and that's where most of the playground is, we're playing with the balls. And it's an accident waiting to happen if you take the fence down. I've lived there for 65 years on the face of the park, and I've seen a lot of balls come hit the fence. But if they run off the street, something's gonna happen.
Thank you.
I'm Jim Garlick. I'm a Don's neighbor. Well, between the two of us, we've been in the neighborhood for about 140 years. We're representing over 500 years of residency in Moline, around Parsons Park. I have found one person that thinks it may be a good idea. I think you've probably seen petitions we've had. We both retired or graduated from here. I work with many different reasons, downward, product design. We work with one thing, anticipatory design. We didn't want somebody to sit their hand in a slot with their fingerprint on it. But we didn't shut off the machine set. We try to avoid those situations. We feel the fence does. There's a lot of traffic. That's the only part. It's the only part that only has traffic. Amazingly, I moved here, I was 3 years old. Minister, city manager, and a attorney, business law, 5 children. Today, we're 15. Across the alley, we've done 9, 25. With Parsons, we're concerned.
Thank you so much. Anyone else for public comment? No? All right, thank you to the speakers. We will now need to move to executive session.
Your Honor, I make a motion that the council convene an executive session for the purpose of discussion of pending probable or imminent litigation, 5 ILCS 120/2C11.
Second?
All right, roll call, please.
Alderman O'Brien.
Aye.
Waldron.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Macias.
Aye.
Went.
Aye.
Timian.
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays.